think everybody's here. I think before we're just jumping in, let's do a quick round of intros. Obviously, like Mirko, you wanna start if no one probably everybody know Mirko by that point.
Sure. So I'm Mirko. I'm part of the DevRel team at MetaMask/Consensus. Been in the space for probably 7-8 years already. Was kind of big into DeFi since 2020 when like PancakeSwap and everyone else started to show up. So yeah, I'm really excited in general about DeFi and how it can kind of serve the unbanked and kind of communities that don't have access to traditional finance. It has been, in my opinion, it has been like a crazy year this year in terms of what's happening in the space, and there's so many new protocols, so many new cool projects. So it's really exciting. And I'll pass it to DeFi Spartan.
Yeah, hey everyone. So my name's Andrew, DeFi Spartan online. I am developer relations at Avara, which is the team that built the Aave protocol and also the Lens protocol. I've been with Avara for about 3 years now, so I spend a lot of my time on full stack development, mainly contributing sort of to the development of the Aave protocol for a while. And now recently I've actually moved to developer relations and doing a lot of coding and also creating resources and documentation about the different protocols that we work on and also just sort of the DeFi space in general. And kind of, I guess the thing which excites me most about DeFi is just that it's sort of the first like radical transformation of finance that we've really seen in a long time. And I think it sort of touches kind of all aspects of our lives. And, from financial to social, there's a lot of different ways that blockchain can sort of change the way that we, conduct business as humans. And, what really drew me to this is that it's such an early technology, and that the things that we can kind of build and teach people today can have like a very lasting effect in ways that like I don't think other areas of software development like currently do. So I guess, yeah, the impact and the potential to like change the course of humanity is like really why I'm interested in this space.
Nice. Dan, you wanna go next?
Yeah, cool. I think I resonate a lot with what DeFi Spartan just said. I'm Dan. I lead the growth team in Pendle. We are a yield trading protocol, and we saw pretty sizable growth over the past 2 years since we launched Pendle V2. Quick blurb about me. Pendle is actually my first crypto stint, and that's my first time delving into DeFi coming from the TradFi space, and it was a pretty natural transition for me considering Pendle is an interest rate derivative product. It's just that the culture and the entire possibility and composability of DeFi is what drew me in and what made me stick to it for the long run.
Nice. Daniel, you wanna go next? Feel free to jump in. Huh?
Hello, everyone. I am Daniel from Consensus. I work on a lot of our partnerships. I have a few other roles as well. I would say that I've been in the space since tangentially or fully since about 2015 because I went to a Solidity workshop hosted by Consensus and BlackRock, actually. So it's funny. It all comes around back in 2015. Today, I guess the most relevant things is, to echo what, Spartan was saying, I've looked after LATAM for a long time in Consensus, and in Latin America, there are so many and underbanked people who don't even consider themselves crypto people per se, but they get that they can put like a stable coin into a lending protocol, which is so important for them to just get those fundamental, financial applications that a lot of us take for granted. So I think it's super important, and I really echo that. And I think specifically as part of the partnerships role, I've been looking after our DeFi adapter standard that we launched last November that makes it just easier to read and write from different projects, improves UX, makes a lot of significant improvements. I'll pause there because I'm going to tell you a lot about it later. I don't want to bore you, but thanks for the invite. I'm really pleased to be here.
Oh, pleasure to have you. And great profile pic, Daniel. Cool. Let's DeFi Yako. Go for it.
Hey, everybody. My name is Jakov, and as you can see from my handle, I'm really into DeFi. Currently, my role is Master of DeFi at Lido, so contributor to Lido DAO. But I actually have a technical background. I started my Web3 journey, professional Web3 journey in 2019 as a hobby in 2016. I started as a builder in Ethereum Foundation and Solidity team, but along the way, I slowly transitioned more to the management and business roles. So I led the Lido Polygon protocol, and finally now I'm fully focused on growing Staked ETH and Lido on Ethereum.
Nice. It sounds super exciting. It's great to see always journeys from, from builders and developer to like thought leader in the ecosystem. Cool. So cool. Yeah, I mean, this space, as we mentioned before, we're doing this just to, to bring some awareness around specific topics. I think we have the top leaders also like around our space today. And what else? Let's get it started. Everybody's speaking about, where we are today, how things moved forward. But the question here is that, and for the people that know me, I'm always a little bit getting spicy on people on questions around spaces. But what has really changed in the past 4 years? And for the people out there, from the DeFi summer back in the day. So what are the things that really changed that you saw a big movement? And Mirko, feel free to get it started. I know you were also very, very excited about this. And then we do a round of quick thought and inputs.
Sure. I think overall there is a lot more maturity, obviously, in the market. It seems it might be a bit controversial, but I think that people are not willing to take massive risk as before. And I'll elaborate a bit more in a second. But obviously, we kind of, at MetaMask, we have like a very interesting position where we're not a DeFi protocol, obviously we're a wallet, but we work with all these different protocols. And we're seeing so many of them coming and so many of them succeeding, so many of them like failing and so on. So if I look at back in 2020, I remember that there was like this massive degen kind of culture where you had like things like, I don't know, Olympus DAO and Magic Internet Money, etc. They kind of burn a lot of people. And I think a lot of people like kind of got away from the space due to this. Like they were really excited about DeFi back in the day, but then a lot of these protocols kind of turn out to not be what it was expected to be, right? So, but at the same time, during those kind of hard times in the last bear market, we had so many new protocols that were being built. I think Pendle, it was already a project back then, but obviously they can improve a lot. And it kind of in the last year, we've seen it that everyone is talking about Pendle. They're doing an amazing job with points and so on. And the big protocols like Aave and Uniswap, they kind of manage to always kind of stay on top of the game, and they're kind of they're like now some of the biggest names in our space as well, which is great. And yeah, I'm just like, for me, it's been really exciting to see like that. In both like the good and the bad times, we always had this kind of amazing people, these amazing teams that kept going on and kept building kind of amazing things. But yeah, in general, like I feel, and I'll pass it probably again to DeFi Spartan because he might have some good kind of points on this. But I feel like the people are not so prone to get massive risk as much as before. And I think they are kind of okay with the lower yield, but in a kind of more a safer way, if we can say this. So they prefer more stable, less risky, but less yield in general for DeFi. And yeah, I'll pass it to DeFi Spartan again.
Yeah, I would say I agree with a lot of those points. I think that risk management is kind of definitely one of the areas that has matured a lot over the last like 3-4 years. I just kind of thinking back to like when I sort of really got into this space in sort of, 2020, 2021, what the landscape was like. And really it was kind of Ethereum dominated in the sense that, all of your applications were running directly on Ethereum. You're mostly using protocols that you kind of heard of before, but, there wasn't really a lot of, documentation or communities that were like sprouting up. And so over the course of the last 3 years, I think what we've seen is sort of maturing at both the protocol and also like the network level, where, at the protocol level, you have, protocols like Aave and Uniswap that are kind of deployed as these smart contracts, which sort of exist on their own. And you can sort of think of them as like castles of code. And, when you're deploying these smart contracts, you're not exactly sure, what the reception is going to be, how the system is going to evolve over time. And I think it's been really exciting to see that like these castles of code that we've deployed and have been using for the last 3 to 4 years have sort of withstood all of these different market movements, whether it be sort of, general prices or sort of general trends within the DeFi landscape of new tokens, new projects. These pieces of code continue to operate the exact same way. And what we've seen is that now these pieces of code are being deployed to newer networks, which are more scalable and have all of these different features like account abstraction, which is making them, easier to use, more accessible for people. And I think that trend is really just going to continue, where we see the same protocols, the same sort of ideas, sort of evolve in terms of risk management, but sort of stay the same in the sense that it's the same protocol, it's the same pieces of code that people are interacting with. They're just doing it in much more accessible ways on cheaper networks and using, better wallets and better infrastructure.
Nice. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would like to jump in. So for sure, first of all, I agree with everything that was said before. From my perspective, when I take a look back at DeFi summer, I remember all of these primitive DeFi protocols just exploring, and then like seeing a bunch of very degen forks, people hunting for tokens, for farming tokens, inventions of these mechanics that are still active now, being masked in points and like a bit modified and polished mechanics to attract users and grow the protocol. But a lot of very important things have been built by just exploring, innovating. What is really important to mention also is that over time, we managed to find protocols and mechanics, and also ways to manage risk that we today more or less consider as something that's part of the infrastructure that we don't really worry about anymore. For example, base layer dexes, obviously there's innovation to optimize the trading and all of that, but we are already like pretty good on that level. With lending markets, also like we have Aave, we have approach of Morpho, for example, that does things a bit different, especially when it comes to the governance and isolated pools, but we are pretty good there. But then we have an explosion of innovation and degenism again on the L2s layer, on the LRTs, and I feel like with every new narrative, we finish with something good. Well, hopefully, we finish with some new inventions. We filter out the things that were not good, and something good ends up there. So we pretty much open up the space for the next narrative to build on top, which I think is really, really great. So like looking back, starting from Dex's lending markets, then we have Yearn, who is still active, but there are also a lot of other Vault protocols that are really improving user experience. All of these DeFi primitives are either like usable for advanced users, or even some strategies are not even possible to be executed manually unless you're a smart contract developer, so you write custom strategies. So I think protocols that provide vaults are really, really important piece of infrastructure. And like, it's not only about DeFi, as it was mentioned, scaling with L2s. When we started DeFi story, everything was happening on Ethereum. So a lot of bottlenecks appeared there. So moving to L2s, cross-chain interactions, cross-chain liquidity, still a lot to build, a lot to explore, but we also need to be careful when it comes to exploration until we are sure that certain piece of infrastructure is battle tested. Well, moving to build on top of it is taking obviously a lot of risks from the base layer. So yeah, very, very excited to see what the future brings.
Yeah, maybe just to add to that, I think, everything that's happened in DeFi is super interesting, but I think a real fundamental thing is the things that happen around DeFi as well. So, like, if you think about it, like, people used to say there's no use cases for crypto, right? But I think we've pretty assuredly proven that there's at least two use cases that are absolutely proven, which are payments and lending, right? And if you think about payments and lending, they happen to be, outside of crypto, just the two most fundamental financial applications since ancient Mesopotamia, and true in all societies, right? Under feudalism, mercantilism, under state-based communism, under socialism, social democracy, capitalism, all societies ever run on payments and lending, right? And I love staking. I love liquid staking. I love restaking. I love DEXs. But like, I sincerely believe that literally just having like stable coins, good L2s, and lending protocols alone would be enough to upend society and financial applications. But you need a lot of things around that to make that happen too, right? So if you think about like, in terms of like the custody providers in 2020, there's been a lot of evolution. Fireblocks existed then, but I think they've evolved and really proven themselves to be just an excellent MPC tech custody provider. Others like GK8 and MPC Vault are in that camp. I think Safe has done incredible work in evolving along this, and I think MetaMask Institutional, our product, allows you to trade from multiple custodians and also provides some pretty good portfolio management. So that's great there. In the fund admin space, folks like MG Stover, Formidium have done a lot of work to ensure that you can actually calculate like your NAV when you're doing all these complex things. And that's all like on the institutional side. Across institutional and retail, I'd say there's a lot of good risk providers. We have we have folks like Hexagate and Blockade that serve both institutional and retail folks. If you take a look at our MetaMask Snaps library for getting a little alerts, even on the retail side, that's amazing. Additionally, too, I think in the UX space, there's been a lot done. If you take a look at like Lemon as a fintech in Argentina, I think super interesting. They take USDC, they have a trading desk that puts it into Aave, and then users just click a button, right? So if you're an Argentine, you don't have to be crypto native. You just have to be someone who wants a US dollar yield bearing account that, if I was going to go to a bank, I would have to be like a high net worth private bank customer there. You could be putting in like $7 every few days and the trading desk takes care of it for you. And then you just have this yield bearing USDC, USDT, account that was facilitated by DeFi. There's a few interesting things. I don't think we've cracked permission pools yet, but people like Aave Arc have certainly done, I think, the building blocks there that are going to get us there. And then, of course, I'll talk about it later, but I think we're going to find ways via these DeFi adapters to make all this a lot more extensible to even novice users in the MetaMask experience. So my hat is off to everyone who works at any of these lending DEX, liquid staking, restaking protocols, but also I think everything that's happened around it to both make it safer, more secure, institutional grade, or easy for even a novice has been essential over these past 4 years.
What about you guys at Pendle then? Like, because you guys are quite a crazy grow. I remember we also spoke with your co-founder at Builder Nights Dubai. It was actually quite crazy to see the Pendle grow, how you guys evolved in the V2 version. I don't know.
Yeah, very interesting. I think to your initial question on what changed the past 4 years, I think that definitely benefited us a lot. I think in general, just building on top of everyone's answer, the maturity level of the DeFi participant has definitely matured a lot, in a sense that both the protocol side, people are building things that are more resilient, from the smart contract level, from the UX level, things are much more accessible for everyone. And that is one part of the maturing ecosystem that we see, although we do still have a long way to go. On the ecosystem side, people are building primitives that are building on top of one another. And while we see still plenty of more degenerate protocols, but there are still plenty of fundamentally important protocols that are being built out to kind of structure the entire financial space in DeFi. But that's more on the protocol side. But from the user side as well, that maturity has significantly grown. You don't really see 4 or 5 digit APYs. People are more skeptical in a good way of insanely high numbers. Valuations has still gone up then, but even then, I think we are in a state where people start to question whether these crazy valuations that we see are justifiable or not. And again, this level of increasing maturity from market participants is what we've been seeing, and we'll continue to see over the next couple of years as the industry matures even more. And again, we've been a pretty big beneficiary of that, considering Pendle is a yield trading protocol, or interest rate derivatives. And being a derivative, you kind of require a little bit more complex, or users that understand complex mechanics. And since the ecosystem has matured more and more, people start to receive complex mechanics better than what they used to be, and it kind of helped us out in a lot of our growth recently as well.
I think I really I want to build on that, Dan, and for everybody here, because you touched a bit on Degen, and my question is all about, are actually people less risk adverse, right? Like what I'm saying is that, are people actually choosing lower yields instead, kind of like starting doing Degen around things? So, and I don't know, it's like something that I'm always wondering, do you see that, that kind of like, trend around, more like the operation and kind of like the behavior of users? And we will touch with developers later, but this is for everybody, but feel free to take it then.
Sure, I'll take it first and then pass it on to someone else here. But regarding user behavior, I don't think it's that people are settling for lower yields. I think people are adjusting their risk reward ratio better than where they used to be. Market participants are, in a sense, more intelligent now, and people do question things that seem to be numbers that seem to be out of place. Not that people have a lower risk tolerance now, but I feel like people are investing things in a much smarter way than what they used to be. And I feel like that's kind of part of the rite of passage of learning, right? Once you get burned, you learn enough, and then you start understanding a little bit more on how the market works and look into mechanics a little bit deeper. And we'll definitely still get newer participants that are first-time DeFi participants that are not aware of these kind of risks, and they will be burned. I feel like it's like a kind of rite of passage for everyone to experience some sort of downfall in the space. And once you learn enough, and once we have enough people learning the same lessons, the industry matures a little bit more. And that's when you start to see yields started coming down. Not necessarily because people are not drawn into higher yields, but more so because people start to understand a little bit more that things that generates profit might in a safe way cannot go. You cannot have 4 and 5 digit APY for such assets. So I do see that in a maturing market, we do see yields start falling down. And then for Pendle, the fixed yields that we provide has been a very popular product offering for a lot of the more sophisticated players and institutions. And the bulk of the capital that flows into Pendle is actually for the fixed yield portion. So we see people are more attracted to security and understanding how protocol works, instead of just aping into the crazy high points APY that we also have in our product offering.
I would just like to jump there, add a small note. I think it's really like there will always be degens. I don't doubt about that. The folks that are looking for very high API numbers, but where we did a really good job is that finally there's a lot of transparency. So protocols that are well established, that are taking security really seriously, now can actually differentiate by providing, for example, risk assessments, audits, verifiable source code, and stuff like that. And when you take a look back, as somebody who is new, and even if you're not that new, if you're not an engineer, and if you cannot read the code yourself, well, everything looked very similar, if not even the same. So then you get like a fork of, I don't know, Uniswap v2 with a different token. And for you, it's like pretty much crafted to become a degen because, well, it's really hard to recognize what is real, what is not real. And today, if you take a look at the landscape, you can actually do your research and due diligence and understand, well, which teams are serious and like building something that's there to stay and scale and reach population that's not only vegan and just retail, but also maybe go towards institutions. But then still you have protocols that are just exploring and doing all kinds of food tokens and stuff like that.
Hey, cool. One thing, like I wanted to kind of chat around a bit the kind of what the challenge we're facing. One of the issues I see at the moment is obviously the fragmentation, especially cross-chain. This kind of daunting, especially for new developers that want to build a DeFi app in some of the let's say not the biggest chains, right? Especially around layer 2s, right? Because most of the DPL is around Arbitrum, Optimism, etc. So I see, especially in hackathons, that a lot of these new developers, they prefer to just use these kind of larger chains because they say, okay, that's where most DPL is, where the money is. It's much easier to bootstrap liquidity if I build my protocol on Arbitrum or on Optimism or on Base, rather than, I don't know, let's say Mento or Metis or Scroll, that are amazing blockchains per se, but they don't have as much liquidity around, they don't have as many users. And like, how can we kind of solve this challenge? How we can, around the liquidity and fragmentation and so on? And maybe, I don't know, pass it to Francesco and then I can pass it to other people as well.
No, go for it. I'm just here. I wanna learn more. DeFi Spartan, and what's up with what do you think?
Yeah,
fragmentation.
I mean, this is actually something that sort of, the Aave DAO has had a lot of sort of, experience with over the course of the last couple of years. Being deployed to now, I think 13 chains in production. And obviously, liquidity fragmentation is a big issue, and I think it's specifically an issue with regards to wallets and sort of smart accounts that I think we all kind of agree that, these smart contract wallets or sort of these custodial solutions are going to be like sort of the approach that is best sort of from a user experience perspective. But it does sort of have this challenge that, a lot of times you're not sort of as agile, not able to sort of, switch between these different networks. And, one area that's, tried to sort of adapt to this is the Aave v4 proposal that was launched roughly about 2-3 weeks ago, has a lot of features that are actually specifically designed to sort of address this. And one of the main ones is this idea that sort of the liquidity that is provided to Aave can sort of be unified. And what this means is that, right now you'll have sort of separate pools of Aave on the same network. So you might have Aave version 3, Aave version 2, and they sort of all share the same parameters. But sort of this idea of unified liquidity in Aave v4 is that you can have sort of one pool, which all users are basically supplied to, and you can sort of add these custom modules so that, where that yield is or where that liquidity is actually supplied is actually changing based on governance decisions. And sort of why this is important, back to the original question of how this sort of tackles liquidity fragmentation, is that when you have sort of this system that can sort of be modular and have sort of more granular risk controls, you actually open the door to have sort of liquidity that's unified across networks. So sort of this grand vision of sort of having collateral on one network and then borrowing on another network. That's sort of what this sort of design entails. And sort of the reason that you haven't really seen these sort of designs take off today is one, because of the user experience. And second, and I think more importantly, is just the risk that is associated with sort of these cross-chain bridges. And that liquidity on one network will kind of never be as secure as it is on Ethereum. But when you have these solutions that you're able to like have really fine-tuned risk control, and you're also able to have these bridges which are now secured by math, by zero knowledge proofs rather than validators, that's sort of what will open the door for, at a protocol level, to actually sort of solve these liquidity issues and sort of, make the experience cross-chain, actually work for users.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, just because usability was brought up, I think fragmentation is a huge issue in liquidity. But again, thinking about the enablers and the end users, it'd certainly be an issue. We think about it a bit in on the MetaMask institutional team across kind of like three vectors, right? So number one is, we work with a number of custodians such that you can transact using MetaMask, but they sign the transaction. But we give them the option to let MetaMask still broadcast, so you're limited by the RPC endpoints MetaMask can tap, instead of, every time a new network pops up, the custodian has to do new network support. So we hope that helps out. We also provide this single window. So if you're using multiple custodians and you're, deployed across multiple networks, you can at least get this single window, both in like a GUI and over APIs. And then lastly, we are enabling a lot of like programmatic enablement so that you can automate a lot of these processes. So makes it easier for jumping between these two. That doesn't necessarily solve liquidity, but I think usability and liquidity are kind of inextricably linked, right? So solving one should help the other a bit too.
Very cool. Maybe, I don't know, Dan, if you want to speak for Pendle as well. I know you guys have multiple chains at the moment. I think we have 4 or 5 integrated, and hopefully you will have more in the future as well. I'm also curious, from the perspective of a DeFi protocol, how do you decide what chain to prioritize and which one to implement?
I think it's different for every protocol. I'm pretty sure it's different for Aave. I think perhaps you can explain a little bit more. But for us, we are a derivatives protocol, so we're built on top of existing liquidity, and we can only function if there's underlying liquidity for us to tap into. We cannot be the pioneer of liquidity in any given ecosystem. We can only enhance it. So I think that makes our decision in going to a chain pretty simple. If the chain has traction, if the chain already has liquidity for us to tap into, that's where we're going. So, but that also means that it's difficult for us to grow an ecosystem ourselves, and we have to rely on other protocols to flourish first, and then we can have a chance to even open that ecosystem. But on liquidity fragmentation, I think that's definitely a very real issue. We have multiple assets, not only on different maturities on Pendle, same asset of the same maturity trading on 2 different chains. I'm aware that they have different risk profiles, for sure. But liquidity fragmentation across chain is something that I think is definitely not solved yet, and we are looking into it. But I think the solution might come from things that are more systematic instead of from protocol to protocol.
That makes sense. Yeah, super interesting. All this kind of like also risk mitigation and fragmentation that we see in the ecosystem. I think like we touched a little bit also like on staking, and obviously like the big elephant in the room with restaking. We saw like also we were discussing this, Mirko, a couple of weeks ago, also, like how Eigenlayer is handling all the airdrops and everything around like developer and community grow. But the question I had is that more around like emerging trends and what's going on around the ecosystem of restaking, all the kind of like the AVS hype. Like what you guys are thinking about that? Obviously, restaking is a big part of the picture, and what else is around? But also like how we are dividing this restaking trends around AVS is in a much more like granular way.
I think I can start first, since we are pretty involved in the overall LRT space. Personal thoughts here. I am generally a fan of things just developing in nature. LRT is kind of like a natural extension of using Ethereum security or providing as a service to kind of like securitize some other things. And for LRT specifically, what I find interesting is that while right now they're all hype and pretty the hype crazes because of the point system, but once the point system end, I do think they still have a place in the space. One thing that is interesting from LRTs as compared to LSTs is that the yields from individual LRTs will differ from one another because they get to choose which AVSs they want to secure. So if they choose AVSs that are more risky, the LRTs will tend to have higher yields, but there will be also LRTs that are more risk-taking and, taking on more risky AVSs for higher yields, but also potentially higher chance of being slashed. And that kind of fight between different LRTs, taking on different AVSs is something that I'm personally very interested in and looking forward to see how it plays out and how the different LRTs will eventually emerge with different yields and different risk profiles. And that's something that I'm personally very interested in. And I feel like that is something to observe once the point system, points meta kind of end. And we're already kind of, in my opinion, seeing the final stage of the points meta.
And what about like Lido? What do you guys like, like around this kind of LRT trends? Like, did you guys change something, or are you guys aligning on this strategy? Like, what is happening?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first of all, I know like there's a lot of rumors going around that Lido might be building an LRT or restaking middleware protocol. So that's not really true. But what is true is that we are adjusting the strategy to work it to like pretty much to make Lido staked it as a core part of infrastructure for LRTs and restaking protocols. I think there's a lot of value in Lido staked it being staking middleware because the holders of staked it know exactly what they're getting, and they made a choice to only validate Ethereum. So there's a lot of value in that. But considering that there's a lot of value in that, I also think that restaking protocols and liquid restaking protocols can also extract that value from Lido. So currently, my opinion is that LRTs, the way we see them now, are going to be very different from the LRTs, same LRTs and some new ones in like, say, like 8 to 12 months or maybe more. Depends, like predicting time in this space is like impossible task. What I'm trying to say is that currently everything is based around eigenlayer. There's no slashing. So it's pretty much playing in sand. Like you can do whatever you want. It's like, it's hard to make a mistake. Obviously you can make a mistake, but in the future, it shouldn't be like that. In the future, as it was mentioned, there will be a lot of emphasis on adjusting risk, providing different risk profiles for obviously different customers. And also from the point of view of AVSs, I think the way currently it's set is a bit maybe counterintuitive, at least for me. I was expecting restaking to be something that can help empower existing proof of stake consensus based protocols. But then what is actually happening is that teams projects see a very cool way to boost their either old product or create a new one and just get attached to eigenlayer. So what's actually happening is that we have a lot of capital like being restaked, and then we have a lot of unknown demand on the AVS side. I think that's also going to change a lot with the introduction of slashing, with the actual activation and usage of these AVSs. So it's going to look quite a bit different. What is really important from the staking side and Lido side is, again, it's my opinion, but I think I share it with a lot of other folks, is that LRTs shouldn't be, and also restaking protocols shouldn't be focusing on building a staking infrastructure. It's like really not their business. If they're doing that, they will probably sacrifice what they could have built on the liquid restaking side. So, instead of building your infrastructure there, rely on something that's, battle tested, that decentralizes Ethereum, and you can just use it as a black box. And I'm obviously, biased there, but staked it would be the preferred choice, just because, of the way, we are all as contributors and as wider community, from LidaDAO, working hard to be the best, to create the best, liquid staking protocol. So there's a reason why there's like 150 contributors doing only that. Now imagine a liquid restaking protocol doing that as a side hustle. It can scale until somewhere, but can it really scale to the sizes and still be decentralized? Well, that's the question.
That's a good point. Speaking about scaling, I don't know, does anybody want to contribute to that? If not, I'm moving to developers.
No, since if you want to speak about developers, I think one of the big gap that there is in general around LRTs and even ABSs, and there is a big lack of metrics and tools for analytics. So like we know that there is a lot of money being locked, but we don't really have like a good way to analyze where this money is going, where it's coming from, etc. So I think obviously like from a founder perspective, it's more appealing to just build another LRT because it's really easy to sell it to a VC, right? Rather than like a tool for analytics or a metrics dashboard. Like we all know that, but I think it's also like our job as a community is like way to empower people that want to build this kind of tools that are also useful both for end users as well as developer, right? And this is something, I don't know, maybe Francesco, you agree with me, but in general, like around hackathons, I don't see a lot of people that are excited about these use cases, right? But like I want to see more tools like Layer 2 Bits, DeFi Llama, you know?
Yeah, there are some around like ABSs, like, aggregators and stuff, but nothing like big. I remember like we had Nader doing a cool keynote on like categorizing, like restaking landscape with like Watchtower and everything. And then we were asking ourselves what everybody's building around, but it's still very siloed. And I think even like going a little bit more high level, like we are lacking specific like developer tooling for the developer outside here, right? Like similar to what basically like Snaps is providing with all permissionless innovation, you are able to extend functionality of your wallet. In the same time, what are we doing around DeFi or restaking specific around developer tooling and kind of like making the experience a little bit like easier. And even tooling for monitoring. And I don't know, like I'm always going to like Dune dashboards, but I don't know what you guys think about that. Like, where are we? Do we still need to work more on that? I mean, I know I'm always super excited. Back in Paris, Daniel, we push like all this narrative around DeFi adapters. So also like activating developers in the community to build adapters for like DeFi application is something that I'm very also passionate about. But yeah, so there is no real question. Like my question is also like, are developer tooling out yet? Because we're being a lot of like awareness around user adoption. I think like adapters are super cool, but what's next? What is happening next? How are we supporting developers more? I see you want to jump in, Daniel. Go for it.
Sure. This feels like a good segue moment. And also, yeah, just for everyone here who isn't aware of the adapter standard that we launched for MetaMask, it came out last November, and it came, I think, really fundamentally from this place of, if you know Lex Sokolin, he used to work at Consensus. He's a real great thinker, and he was talking a lot back in the day, just before kind of the birth of DeFi Summer, but about the potential of DeFi in the sense that so many fintechs were just like skinning the existing banking system, and they were giving like this good UX, but they weren't fundamentally building anything new. He used the metaphor of like manufacturing a lot, like, and distribution. So like if you sell lipstick or if you sell like aspirin, you got to manufacture it. And then, you come up with cool ways to market and sell it. And all these fintechs were doing better, like marketing, selling, a little bit of, UX with maybe a little special sauce, but fundamentally the manufacturing was the same old bank rails. And one of the exciting things about DeFi is that I think all the people on this call have done tremendous things to contribute to changing that manufacturing. But we forgot sometimes that the UX is still kind of the table stakes, right? Just because it's the lesser important thing than the manufacturing doesn't mean you don't get to not do it. And I think DeFi is challenging both to novices and to like large institutions, and that like reading and writing to these protocols is quite tough. So like on the reading side, it's very hard for me if I'm yield farming, even simpler things like lending or liquid staking, to really see my P&L each day. And then on the writing side, we love that, everyone integrates the MetaMask SDK and you can visit all these dApps, but maybe some people don't want to be navigating to a bunch of dApps. They want to do everything from one interface. Maybe an institution wants to do like high frequency or algorithmic trading. And to this end, we've created these read and write adapter standards. Thanks some of the folks on this call. Lido was one of the early contributors. Really appreciate it. And it's great because I get to log into my MetaMask Institutional every day and see my precise P&L on all my Lido positions. So that's fantastic. But essentially, yeah, we have this GitHub. We share it with folks, and you can write a read or a write adapter. The read displays like absolutely accurate P&L in dollar or other currency performance and percentage performance terms for liquid staking, lending, yield farming, etc. And the write adapter framework that we released is going to allow folks to interact with protocols independent of these front-end apps, which I think lessens the surface attack area. A lot of these protocols that have had issues the past few years, it's not like a contract issue, it's like a front-end app attack. So lessening that surface attack area is great, but it also just opens up things. Like if you're an exchange and you want to let a customer stake with Lido or put some USDC into Aave or use Pendle, right? They can do it in a point and click way because they can have like event-based, API calls, or, some of those more exotic hedge funds that want to do like high frequency or programmatic algorithmic trading will enable that. So really anyone who wants to contribute to this adapter standard, we'd really appreciate it. It's been around since November, but we are rolling it out into our experiences. So the MetaMask institutional users have had it in the GUI. They've had it over APIs. We sell the APIs to third parties like custodians and fund admins. But then in 2 weeks, the read APIs also go live in the MetaMask portfolio dApp. So any of our 36 million monthly active users can log in and see, their precise P&L on Lido or Aave positions. And we would really we thank everyone who's contributed, and we'd love to see more because we think this type of standardization is a real leap forward.
Yeah, I guess I would just chime in and say that, I think that standardization and actually pitching these things in a way which is sort of consumable to both users and developers is something that our industry has, I think really struggled with. I think to this point, we've done a very good job of sort of pitching the things that we've built to each other, in the sense that I know what basically all of these projects on this call are doing because I've been involved in this space for a while. But if I weren't involved in this space, it would be very daunting to kind of try to parse, what is the difference between all of these different, projects that we're each representing here. And I think that the area that we can kind of improve this is sort of more general education. So teaching people not about specific protocols or about, specific standards, but just talking about DeFi and Web3 in a more general sense. Like, why is this useful to me in my daily life? And then sort of extending that also to developers. If I'm a developer and I'm currently building on sort of like Web 2 rails, specifically if I'm doing financial things, obviously I think everybody in this call would agree that we know that Web 3 is a much better platform to build on top of. But I don't think we've really sold a lot of these developers. I think there's a reason why more people are still building on these centralized Web 2 platforms than Web 3. And I think it's not really the tech that's the problem anymore. As we're sort of seeing these more scalable application types, we're seeing, better wallet technology. The technology really isn't the issue anymore. The issue is that we have not done a good enough job of sort of pitching people to build on top of the technology and use the technology. And so I guess, my takeaway would be that, we need to do more work sort of on a general level about educating people about why this stuff is important and about why it's useful and helpful to build on top of. And that'll sort of iron out a lot of the kinks that we see with, specific integrations like the ones that Dan was mentioning.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more because a lot of time, not just developers, but builders or even users, they are following a thought leader in the space even before okay, this is the technology that you use, right? And also sometimes we need to kind of take a step back and saying, this this is why we're doing this. These are the reason why also we're doing this. We are trusting those, not even trusting, like we are supporting those players in the space because kind of like they are the thought leader in the space, even before hearing what product people are working about. And I think like that's why also all this narrative around like what these builder nights we're trying to do, and for anybody that will be in Berlin, like come Friday. But I think like, verticalized narrative are much more stronger value proposition before even like speaking about the technology you're building. And yeah, it's just super exciting because because we are speaking about all these topics, challenges, how we are risk mitigating, how are Dijon still there, all these kind of topics, and bring awareness around the ecosystem. It's super important. Cool. I think we are almost at time. I don't know if in the audience I see a bunch of like also like known people, but if you guys have any question, feel free to raise your hand, and we are happy to answer. What else? Anything to add, Mirko, on that instead? And if you guys have any question, please raise your hand, and we will like get you asking a question to the our space panelists.
All good on my side, and I think Jorge is. I don't know if he's raising his hand or he's clapping.
People are all clapping. Okay, cool. Sounds good. I think no questions. Let's do a quick round. What are lessons learned here for today, and what we need to look forward for next for the people that either they are here today, but they also like will check it out after the space recording. Let's start with you, Mirko, so that we're closing the loop.
I definitely want to see more tooling around apps, around people that want to build both DeFi apps as well as analytics, metrics, dashboards, and so on. So I think that's super important, empowering developers and making sure that the community has all the tools they need to like build amazing things that they have in their mind. And I'll pass it once again to DeFi Spartan.
I would take it. So, yeah, I mean, I guess my main takeaway, I don't remember who said it earlier, but that, the real key to DeFi is the transparency. It's the fact that people are able to interact with these systems and also make decisions off of public data. And, that's really the aspect that I think we need to emphasize, is that we're building these systems, not because they're these cool financial products, even though, I think we all agree that, we're building these financial things which are extremely powerful and so much better than the things that currently exist. But the reason why we are doing this is not necessarily the yield. It's, fundamentally changing the way that people are actually conducting business, conducting agreements, and sort of keeping that in mind with, how we're building things and also how we're kind of talking to people about this. That's sort of my main takeaway about how we can sort of improve DeFi.
Who else want to go next? DeFi, Jaco?
Yeah, I'll be really short. Let's just stay obsessed with security, even if we have to move a little bit slower with user experience. Every big negative event pushes the entire industry so much back that it's really hard to show it to the people that are really not deep inside that there is still something valuable inside.
So important, creating awareness. Go for it, Dan.
Yeah, I found it very interesting just now during the conversation when we were talking about liquidity fragmentation, and then how kind of everyone here understands a little bit that aggregating all those fragmented liquidity is something interesting, especially when V4 was teased a little bit just now. Yeah, and I think that kind of extends to liquidity pretty much everywhere, be it perp Texas or even spot liquidity across all trading avenues out there. There's a way for people to figure out how to aggregate all those liquidity, lending, spot, derivatives. I find that it would be a big step forward, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are already working on solving this specific issue.
Sounds good. Daniel, any closing words on DeFi Adapter, future, and trends, or anything that you want to add?
Yeah, I'll try to be concise. 3 points. Number one, shameless plug. Please, if you've got a project out there, contribute to our DeFi Adapter standard. We'd love it. Number two, appreciation. I am like at least weekly active user of Pendle, Aave, of all these things. So it's fantastic to hear from all you luminaries, Lido. since way back. It's always great to be here with you. And then thirdly, I guess, just to reiterate, the takeaway is I think it's so important, the work that people are doing to actually change the manufacturing of how finance works. And that maybe, hopefully, this year is the year that we do both the manufacturing and the distribution right, such that it really touches everyone that it can with its transformative power, So thanks again.
Thank you. Who else? I think we're good, right? Awesome. So I would say also thanks everybody for chiming in, whoever also will listen to the recording. But this is kind of a casual landscape / verticalized spaces we want to run more and more. So if you guys want to also hear about or have suggestion around specific topics, or even if you want to share whatever you're building, and we're running those monthly developer community call, but in the same time we want to also hear more about not just feedback around the space, but also what everybody's building around their ecosystem and is contributing to a better Web3 and not just DeFi. Feel free to reach out, right? And also with a specific topic or specific wishes. Cool, awesome. Thanks everybody for chiming in, and I see you guys either in Berlin or Prague or Belgrade or ECC in July. And thanks Mirko for co-hosting this. I think it's always great to have support on bringing awareness to the space. Thank you everybody and everybody that was involved in here. Thanks guys.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye bye.